I'm Daniel Mullins from the University of Maryland, where I run the Patients Program, which is a collaboration between our university and communities of patients and healthcare providers who are trying to make research more patient-centered. Earlier in my career, I was analyzing data on important clinical trials, and we would go out to patients and ask them about the results. And suddenly I began to think, well, what if we went out to talk with patients before we designed our trials? Wouldn't that make the research better? Wouldn't it make it more meaningful to patients? And then ultimately, wouldn't that help patients to make better decisions when trials reported out? Comparative effectiveness research is about three things. One is we know that the alternatives, the comparators, work. And what we're really trying to do is figure out, how do I make a decision about which of the things that work best for me? In order for that to be the case, we need to make sure that we're studying things that are important to me, the outcomes that matter. But it's also important that patients like me are in those studies, and so it's important to study what's important and to study it in people who look like people who are living with the disease. I think there's a lot of people who are saying that they're engaging patients, and sometimes they confuse recruitment with engagement. And some people think that if we're recruiting people in a diverse population, that that's authentic engagement. But I would just say that that's really improved recruitment. What we really want is for patients of various backgrounds with different diseases to help us think through how to design our studies, not just participate as human subjects. A lot of this is really looking at a patient as a true co-developer and asking them, what is it that you want to know? And when we listen to the voices of patients and what they want to know, we suddenly realize how we should be learning, what we should be studying, what are the comparators that we should be considering, and what are the outcomes that are most meaningful to patients. Some of the challenges that we have found is that we tend to use jargon. And so I might ask a patient a question in the scientific jargon, and they don't understand the question. So I think the challenge isn't with getting patients to be engaged from their end. I think it's about making sure that as scientists, that we use language that patients can relate to, and therefore they can help us to make research more informative. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now is thinking about diversity of patient perspectives. And there are a lot of groups that have not participated in research in the past. One of the things that we're really trying to do with the Patients Program is to bring those diverse populations into the discussion so that we make sure that when we learn through comparative effectiveness research, that every patient is given information that allows them to make decisions that are best for that individual patient. It's important that we remember that there are other stakeholders beyond the patient. And so we do want patients participating in research as active partners, but there are a lot of stakeholders who influence patients' decisions. There are their medical providers. There are people in their lives who are caregivers in an informal sense. But sometimes there are leaders in their communities from a religious organization or other institutions that really have an impact on the way in which people think about their health, and those stakeholders are equally important to think about. The promise of personalized medicine really brings home the point of why we need patients to be engaged in designing research. Because when it gets to the point where we're really coming up with a therapy that's very specific to you, we need to make sure that people from your community are involved in research. So the patient's future is about making sure that we really are gaining the information needed so that you can make a decision that's best for you. Transparency in real-world evidence is making sure that when we do research, that we're doing it with the highest ethical standards. And the only way for that to happen is for others to be able to know what you're doing. So transparency is really about making sure that you document everything that you did, and ideally you might do that before you start doing your research so that we could see if you deviated from your original research protocol. A lot of people think that we go to real-world evidence when we don't have the time to do a trial. And so they think that we want to rush through doing comparative effectiveness research. As a result, we sometimes don't document everything that we're doing. We sometimes aren't as transparent as we should be. And I think that works against the science.